Hi, everyone. I know some people are still gathering back together again, but as I mentioned, today is really action-packed. So action-packed, there was no morning break. So I am going to get us going so that our first presenter this afternoon can start on time at 1 o'clock, acknowledging that there's still people coming from the lunch and learn, people, taking care of necessary biological functions like eating and going to the bathroom. But I just wanted to reflect for a moment. Thanks to all of you that took the time to create some headlines as you were listening to a lot of different information from our different national healthcare bodies across the country, as well as information on Indigenous health in the country. I really appreciate some of the really fun headlines that you guys created. They are going to stay up for the rest of the day, so encouraging you to please do go and take a look at them when you have a chance. And just to reflect on some of the themes that were coming out from the headlines that were created. And I want to thank Antonella Scali of the Canadian Psoriasis Network and Michael Torres from the Wellesley Institute for doing a quick thematic analysis for me over lunchtime. And this is what they noticed looking at the headlines, that overall, across the different health bodies, there's a sense of, and this is not new to anybody who's been working in this area for a long time, there's duplication of roles, obviously, and there are varying degrees of reforms to try to streamline those roles. Some are very helpful, others seem to be potentially hindering. And that there is a greater movement towards patient engagement and increasingly, hopefully, but of course there are some very good and hard questions being posed by some of you, meaningful patient engagement. So that spectrum that was used by Cadith, when you're talking about meaningful patient engagement, you're going to the far right of that spectrum. You're moving towards empowerment, where it's not just a consultation, here's our ideas, and maybe you get, though if you do it properly, you should get a report back as to what was done or not done with that feedback. But empowerment brings you all the way to the side of you're co-designing, you're co-decision making. The recommendations that patients and caregivers are making are being incorporated actively into an organization or a process or a structure. So those were some of the overall themes. Specific to Health Canada, there was a theme, obviously, of streamlining and that it needs to continue and to amplify. And this one was cute. I didn't write it. Finally, patients are not at the table. Finally, patients are at the table and not on the menu. But also, and I think it's an important caveat of the need to have resources and funds for patients and caregivers and the groups that represent them to really be able to participate in the best way possible as partners in engagement. So for PMPRB, engagement, again, continues to be a theme, but it was more of a challenge to say, where is the real patient engagement? There are significant concerns about reform. It seems like there may be now duplicative instead of streamlining. Is this now starting to become duplicative? Is it a move away from the core mandate? And will these types of changes as a result create potentially more confusion and more delays? For CIHI, that data collection and data sharing, both industry sources, professional sources, personal data, it's all super important. It's a key to systems change, but it needs to be used, and it needs to be used appropriately. Indigenous health, be humble and learn from diverse peoples, Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. The system needs to create needs to invest in greater cultural safety and trauma-informed approaches to care, and that trust underlies all of this and relationship. So those were some of the themes in Indigenous health in Canada. Cadith, a lot of positivity towards the steps towards greater engagement and a call for even more meaningful engagement. So again, moving more and more towards the right side of the engagement spectrum, and thank you for using that spectrum and becoming very clear about the different types of engagement and what to expect, therefore, when you're part of a particular process or body. But yeah, it's just an encouragement to continue going deeper on that and offer more and more opportunities for the more empowering forms of patient and caregiver engagement. And to avoid the feeling of going through the motion that some patient and caregivers and their organizations experience. Within NES, obviously there's been significant effort put into streamlining and seems to be some early successes in that process. And thereby also freeing up more time for people to do better, patients and caregivers to do better submissions as part of that process. And so I think there's some applause there, and we can learn from our Quebecois colleagues. And PCPA, purchasing should be easy. I know that that might be easier said than done, and done with patient input. And there's a question that came up through the PMPRB side and through the PCPA side. So it's definitely a theme of, is PMPRB needed? And what is the value add there? And things are shifting. And so how are these roles and mandates going to all make sense together? And for CLIA, finally, last but not least, that there's an opportunity there. This is a body where you can raise awareness of your illness or condition or population with the facilitation of CLIA so that you can start to engage the private industry side of health and life benefits. So again, thanks to Michael and to Antonella for those themes, and thanks to all of you for participating in the headline exercises, and do take a look at them when you have a chance. And then I also just want to acknowledge, because they're in the room now, so Michael and Marguerite Eigenram, who have been, enthusiastic participants in the summit as patient representatives since the beginning, and their enthusiasm was such that they were actually the first people to ever register for the first ever summit when there was just a handful of people in this room. So just special acknowledgement. Thank you. We're glad you find value in the event. And just to answer a question, PowerPoints are going to be shared after the event if the presenter consented to their being shared. And there will be a report back also that will go out to everybody that will incorporate the content, even of those that maybe didn't consent to the PowerPoints being shared. We can still take some of the high-level content, include that in the report. And that's it for me. I'm going to now pass the mic to our next presenter.